It's IB Nation Sports Talk. We're up. We are rolling on a Thursday. Glad to have you with us, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers, and let's get this party started. You're rolling in, getting ready to go. I think that we've got something that's going to make everybody pretty happy here today. Here in a few minutes. What do you think?
I think so. I think we need more people in the live audience before we roll out the good stuff.
Well, the big show, Brian and Vince, just wrapped up a few minutes ago, so maybe everyone's kind of in the intermission as they head on over here. I see more people jumping in the chat right now. Hit that like button if you would, as we get you started here today. It is we in, we out Thursday, so we've got plenty of we in, we outs from the Champions Lounge that we're going to address on today's show. I did want to start off. I don't know if you saw this news today. Former Notre Dame athletic director Dick Rosenthal passed away today at the age of 94. He left, I think, quite a legacy at Notre Dame, and I didn't even realize it until I read the university release that they put out earlier today. Rosenthal responsible for several key developments, key hires in his time at Notre Dame. For one, he hired Lou Holtz. That worked out pretty well. He hired Muffet McGraw. That worked out pretty well. He hired Kevin Corrigan, men's lacrosse coach. That worked out pretty well. I mean, you've got 5 national championships between those 3 coaches right there, all told. Dick Rosenthal also responsible for the first exclusive TV contract with NBC that began in 1991. That's worked out pretty well for Notre Dame. He was the athletic director who got Notre Dame's Olympic sports into the Big East Conference in 1995. And also, before he left as athletic director, he's the one who, really keyed the expansion of Notre Dame Stadium from 59,000 seats to 80,000 seats in 1997. So I don't know about you, Jess. I'd say that's a pretty good list right there. That again, in terms of the legacy of Dick Rosenthal at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's quite the list of accomplishments, and I didn't realize that he was responsible for all those coaches that you named.
I know. So condolences, obviously, to the family of Dick Rosenthal. Again, he passed away earlier today at the age of 94 years old. So rest in peace to a visionary and the former leader of Notre Dame athletics. All right, well, do you have that whiteboard ready to go for us?
I do. My eyes are like, are your allergies just been really bad recently?
I wouldn't say really bad. They've just been bad in general. Just kind of, kicking. So are you telling me you can't see? Is that what's going on?
No, it's just, I think it's just all of the fluctuation in temperature. It's just like all of a sudden I get like these like goopies in my eyes. So if you see me blinking or messing with my eyes, don't be worried. But I do have the whiteboard ready. If that's
Let's do it.
Me.
Let's do it. Ready for it. So what we're going to whiteboard today, we were talking a little bit yesterday about 2 of the best runs in Notre Dame football history, 2 of the best running plays in Notre Dame football history. The Reggie Brooks 1992 run against Michigan and the Kyren Williams 2021 run against North Carolina. And I figured, we've had people clamoring, and I mean clamoring for the whiteboard here lately. So I said, Jesse, let's do some whiteboard. Which one are we going to look at first?
I
looks
wanted
like Kyren Williams here.
How'd you know?
I mean, come on, right? Even though you put it at the 35-yard line, but
That's
go
where
ahead.
it was at.
The Kyren Williams run,
I'm pretty sure.
I beg to differ because he was back. He was back around the 7-yard. I think the Reggie Brooks run might have been like on the opposite 35, but it was a 91-yard touchdown run. So it was they were at the 9-yard line when the play started out.
I might. Hang on one second. I might have the wrong play, but this score happened against Clemson. It was the 65-yard run.
No, it was against North Carolina is the run you were supposed to be doing.
Oh, then I got them mixed up. This is the Clemson run.
We don't want the Clemson run. We want the North Carolina run.
All right, scrap it all then.
I don't know how. What just happened? Do you have the Reggie Brooks run from 1992?
Yes. That
Let's
one
go
I
to
do
that.
have.
I'm looking at the text that I sent you. People on the boards are debating whether Kyren Williams' 2021 run versus North Carolina or Reggie Brooks' 1992 run versus Michigan is the best all-time Notre Dame run. So I don't know how you got Clemson from whatever year that was, but
Yeah, working too hard during the day, I guess.
so this is the Reggie Brooks run that you've got queued up here for us.
Yes, 1992 from the 20-yard line against Michigan.
Let's do it.
So on this play, really what this is a triple option out of the I formation. And it's really not an overly hard play. I would say Michigan made more mistakes on this play than like, don't get me wrong, it's a great run, but I felt like Michigan could have played this better and ultimately hurt themselves because of it. So
Michigan made a lot of mistakes. Reggie also made them make some mistakes with sheer effort on this play.
right, exactly. So what happens during this play is the ball's on the 20-yard line going into, inside Michigan territory in I formation. And immediately kind of what you notice is Notre Dame has 7 guys in the box. You have 5 linemen, a fullback, and a running back, while Michigan has really 6 in the box and kind of 1 overhang guy and this outside linebacker. But really, he's more worried about this wide receiver that's split out here towards the field, right? And so immediately, when you look at it in a triple option scheme, Notre Dame has 7 players versus Michigan's 6 players in the block, right? Or in the box. So immediately, the first thing that you notice in this play is the left guard is pulling from left to right and going to get out front of Reggie. But in the meantime, the quarterback fakes the fullback dive. So the fullback dive is going up through the middle, and the offensive linemen are all reaching towards their left, and the right tackle is going to chip this defensive end, but really his job is to basically seal this outside linebacker, right? So he leaves the end man on the line of scrimmage, which is by design, because after this fullback dive, the quarterback has the option. He's reading that end man on the line of scrimmage. Am I going to keep it? Am I going to pitch it? So he ends up faking the fullback dive, and then this defensive end crashes down. He's going to take the quarterback on the triple option scheme. So that leaves one person left open, and that's Reggie Brooks to take essentially this pitch, into the boundary, right? And so what ends up happening is this outside linebacker, rather than staying home, he bites down on the fake. So really all that's left now is Reggie Brooks one-on-one with a safety coming downhill. This safety comes downhill, he misses a tackle, but he gives Reggie a good pop. He spins off of that, And then there's two more tacklers kind of in the area who also they kind of like trip over each other. Really, is really what happens. And then Reggie, he spins off this tackle, and here he starts running upfield. And then as he's reaching into the infield end zone, he also takes a pretty significant pop and ends up kind of laying down in the end zone after scoring. And I was watching an interview with him, and he said, every year when you play Michigan, you kind of you're feeling each other out essentially at the beginning, right? And he knew when he took that hit that, oh boy, this is going to be one of those long games versus Michigan, but this set the tone really early. And the reason why I say, Michigan didn't really execute on this play is, one, their outside linebacker who's supposed to be playing the pitch man completely doesn't. He crashes down and plays the quarterback, even though the defensive end is playing the quarterback. So really, at this point, they have two guys playing the quarterback. And I don't know about you, but I would be way more concerned about Reggie Brooks taking the ball than the quarterback. So this outside linebacker really should have stayed home. And I think that's ultimately why this safety misses the tackle, because he's flying downhill, right? Like there's no one there. This is a vacant island. And so again, he gets downhill, but rather than breaking down and making a fundamental tackle, he's going to bounce off of Reggie Brooks. And then ultimately, that allowed some of these players, these overhang players in the box to kind of, essentially trickle their way this way, because they've realized, that's where the play is going. And by that time, it's kind of a big mess in this area where Reggie kind of breaks that first tackle. You have guys kind of falling over each other. He essentially gets past three different guys down here and then takes off towards the end zone. And again, takes a big hit as he's going into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, he broke 5 tackles along the way. And I think you said that he, that Reggie ran to the field. He obviously or to the boundary. He's running to the field side, obviously. And Anthony, how do you respond to this? Because he said, not trying to be critical, this is not a triple option play. I mean, he does.
He fakes it to the fullback.
He fakes the dive to the fullback, and then he has a short roll to the right, which is, what you're saying, like, because of the fact that the outside linebacker crashed on the quarterback and then he pitches. I mean, that's literally triple option, right?
Yeah, he had 3 options: either hand the ball to the fullback, keep it himself, or pitch it to the running back.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
I don't know how you can say
whether it's a trap block or whatever. But
I don't know how you can say off the jump that his intention is purely a fake, that they were never going to hand to him. And I mean, even if that's the case, Michigan still bid on it, right? Like they still respected that was going to be, some sort of handoff. So you could, if whether or not you want to say it's triple option or not, it definitely had like three, I guess you could say fakes or 2 fakes. You know what I mean? 1 fake to the fullback. Obviously the quarterback fakes out the defensive end and pitches it. So, I mean, tomato.
And, the long and the short of it is a great run, well executed by Reggie Brooks. And that's essentially what it comes down to. All right. Thank you very much, Jesse.
Well, I have this Clemson one up. We might as well just go through it now.
All right. Go ahead and tell. What game is this? Kyren Williams, Clemson? Is this 2020? Or is this the same?
This is 2020.
Where are we pulling this from?
This is 2020, and I'm pretty sure this is their first offensive play of the game, where it's a 65-yard run touchdown.
I remember that now. Okay.
So another big electric run by Kyren Williams. And I would say that this run,
even if it's not the one that I cared about, because the 2021 run is literally the best run I've ever seen in person. But
I would say that this run was better than Reggie Brooks's run, even if it wasn't the correct one. So let me pull that one up. And the reason why this one is so good is Clemson really hurts themselves during this play.
Why don't you zoom in that a little bit to make it kind of easier to see up there on the screen? There you go. Okay.
What's
going on here?
I like this play better because I think, one, it's a better play call. I think Notre Dame executes against a defense that is, playing more sound. So what's happening here is Notre Dame is on ball's on the 35-yard line. They're on the boundary, so on the left hash. You have basically 11 personnel here. So you have one tight end and one fullback. The tight end is kind of offset or at the end of the line of scrimmage on the left. Kyren Williams is split out to the right, and Ian Book is in shotgun. And then you have one or two wide receivers to the field side, one wide receiver to the boundary. The reason why I like this play so much is actually Clemson is running a defensive line stunt right into where Notre Dame is trying to run the ball during this play. So their defensive tackle on the field side, as you can see here, is stunting over the top while the other defensive tackle is crashing down into the center. But this works out nicely because he stunts right into the left guard that's reaching. The left tackle is able to then work up to the second level and secure off or seal this play side linebacker. Tight end basically seals off, the end man of the line of scrimmage. This wide receiver seals off his corner. And then Kyren Williams ultimately just takes this handoff. He hits it into the hole. And because they did so well of, sealing off the stunning guy, sealing off the play side linebacker, there's just a huge hole essentially to the left side. And the guy who really makes a mistake on this play is, if you see this blue dash circle, is the field side linebacker. The right tackle is supposed to be sealing him off, but he misses. And this field side linebacker, if he just shoots this gap now, he's gonna blow this play up. He could go untouched and really blow this play up. But I don't know. He kind of hesitates. Probably looks like a little bit Maris Leafau out there on his tippy toes, real hesitant. And he gets caught up in the wash, basically. Instead of shooting this hole, he gets caught up in the wash. Kyren Williams hits the hole, and everyone's accounted for. All Kyren Williams has to do is make one guy miss. This safety tries to come down. Kyren Williams just gives him an inside move and goes out, breaks his ankle, takes off for 65 yards, and Notre Dame scores on the very first play of the game against Clemson at home.
Very well executed. That was more about team execution, that you're talking about, whereas the Reggie Brooks run that you diagrammed, and to a large extent, the Kyren Williams run against North Carolina were very largely individual effort, with the exception of once Kyren Williams got to the sideline against the Tar Heels, he got that beautiful block by Michael Mayer that sprung him for the rest of the way. But like you said, this was great execution by Notre Dame's offensive line inside, and Kyren Williams just hitting that hole and running for pay dirt. Tommy says he thinks the ankles are still planted in the sod. What did you see? I haven't looked at this one as recently as you. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about this defensive back or this safety up here that Kyren Williams absolutely shatters, this guy's ankle. So I think he's saying this guy's ankles are forever buried inside Notre Dame Stadium, and I would have to agree because, I mean, when you get broken off that bad and then he goes on to score a touchdown, I mean, it's like double whammy at that point. You were the last line of defense. You had a clear path to a tackle, and you just got absolutely, jockstrap on the ground, essentially.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Just a huge momentum play right away to be able to hit that on the very first.
I mean, you could argue if Notre Dame that is a game-altering play, the very first play of the game. Notre Dame sets the tone.
Yep.
You take that game, that play away. I know it might sound drastic or dramatic, but there's, that could largely impact the rest of the game, because not only are we talking about Notre Dame getting on top, but it's a confidence booster. You know what I mean? Playing a very tough team at home, it's good. It was a good way to get your feet under the ground and get that confidence established. So very important run.
All right, good stuff. Good to see the whiteboard back. We'll have to see if we can continue to bring it back over the course of the summer. Appreciate it, Jesse. Hit the like button as more people filter into the show here tonight. Let's do some we in, we out. What do you think?
I've been waiting all day for some we in, we out.
All right.
I just hope the questions are good.
I think there's a lot of good stuff that has been submitted. And remember, the place to submit the questions for We In, We Out is the Premium Champions Lounge at irishbreakdown.com. So this one comes from Eye on the Ball. Marcus Freeman gives up offensive reins to Mike Denbrock completely, and therefore CJ Carr is made the number 2 quarterback, and Carr starts and wins at least 2 games due to minor injuries to Riley Leonard. We in, we out on that one to start us off today.
I feel like this question could be 3 separate we in and we outs all in one. I'm just going to go down the list. Marcus Freeman gives up the offensive reins to Denbrock completely. I am in on that. I think that, Marcus Freeman, year 1 with Tommy Rees, I don't know quite the dynamic. I would say that Rees had a large, influence on what was going on.
Very large autonomy.
Yes. Right. Year 2, Jared Parker, first time being an offensive coordinator. It felt like Marcus Freeman had his fingerprint on the offense more so than he did with Tommy Rees. Now you're bringing in Mike Denbrock, a guy who has run very successful offenses, a guy who just, coached a Heisman winner. So I think Marcus Freeman does give the reins up to Mike Denbrock. So I'm going to say we in on that
absolutely.
one.
Because, just to kind of back up what you're talking about, I mean, he's always said he's not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. The first 2 coordinators with far less experience than Denbrock have had the reins. So, Mike Denbrock's going to have the reins. So that's an easy one for me.
CJ Carr made the number 2 quarterback. I think I'm going to say we in on this one by the end of the season. I don't think it's going to be at the beginning of the season, but I think by the end of the season, CJ Carr will be your clear number 2 quarterback. And I'm going to have to say we out on CJ Carr starting any games and winning any games due to Riley Leonard and injury. Unless it's at the end of the season, I think it would be Angeli like beginning to middle, and CJ Carr potentially could be the guy at the end of the season, assuming, something happened to Riley Leonard.
Yeah, I just don't see much depth chart movement coming. They brought all 4 quarterbacks are still here coming out of the spring, and Steve Angeli was clearly the number 2 quarterback this spring. And I know that people want this to happen, and based on the way we saw CJ Carr play both in the closed door jersey scrimmage as well as in the blue gold game, there's a case for Carr to be made the number 2. But I just think that especially early on, they want that experience. Could that happen later in the year? I mean, I don't see it happening. I see them staying with Steve Angeli as the number 2 behind Marcus Freeman. I think the only way this changes is if there is some injury to Riley Leonard and Angeli goes out and plays very poorly and gives the staff a reason on Saturday to be demoted. But otherwise, I don't see it happening. I think that Angeli stays number 2 on the depth chart throughout the season. Good question, though, because a lot of people obviously want to know because of the way that CJ Carr played. This one is from Elmer Layden. The 2024 national champion will come from one of the 5 teams without a first-round playoff bye.
I'm gonna say we in on that, and I would be out on that if it were last year's conferences, but with the new Power 4 conferences, I'm gonna have to say we in, because I think a lot of those like 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds are going to get beat up. I don't think there's going to be, a clear cut, like undefeated team up there that is head and shoulders better than everyone. I think you're going to have at least, 1 loss coming from some of those top teams. And I think that provides for more parity kind of after basically the 1 or 2 spots. So for that reason, I'm just going to say we in, because of these schedules and the amount of team, like the way the Big Ten is this year, like Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State are all going to be playing at least 3 to 4 really tough games this season. And so I think that does allow for parity after the top spots.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about it this week, just the way it sets up. If there's an upset, for example, in the conference championship game, the team going into that, like the number one team in the nation or number two team in the nation, could get upset in one of those conference championship games. And if that happens, that's going to bump them to a 5 or a 6 seed. So you're already going to have a really good team sitting there potentially in that 5 or 6 spot as a seed if there's an upset there. And I think that it's very feasible that could happen. And then you kind of throw in, the old, momentum where you get one of those first round games, you get a little confidence, you get it rolling. Whereas this other team, remember now, because it's the playoffs, December 20th and 21st are going to be those first round games. And so those teams are going to have a game much more recently, whereas the teams that have the first round bye are going to be sitting for about a month waiting for their first playoff game after playing in those conference championship games. So I think that there's something to that the teams that are playing a little bit earlier could get on a little bit of a roll and knock off one of those teams for the first round bye. So I'll say, yeah, I'm in on this as well. Hadn't really thought deeply about it before we got that question, but I like it. All right, so I'm kind of going backwards from the stuff that was posted on the boards because we typically, start forward and then we end up leaving some stuff off. So this one is from Real Irish 1988. We in or are we out? Can you see a Notre Dame in the next 5 years winning back-to-back championships? He says for him, it's a yes. But as he looks through the talent on the roster, I think we'll be able to compete for college football elite. So, back-to-back championships in the next 5 years for Notre Dame. You in or out on that?
So, he said the way the question is phrased, can you see? I can see. We in on the seeing. And
does it actually happen, though?
How about this? I'm going to say we in on this is probably the best chance of happening in the last, Notre Dame's never won back-to-back national champ. Well, they might have way back in the day, but it's really hard to win back-to-back national championships. I'm in on that if there is a window to do it, that this being probably the best, probability-wise window to happen. But on it actually happening, I'm just going to have to say we out because it's just so hard. Like you have to have.
It's hard enough to win one, especially now that you're adding extra rounds to the playoffs.
Right. And so who would be – my thing is who would be your quarterback? Because I feel like you have to have – of all the teams that are really good that do back-to-back, you have to have a really good quarterback. And so Notre Dame hasn't had – a quarterback for more than 2 years and how long, right? Since Ian Book, I think the last quarterback to play back-to-back seasons at Notre Dame. So I think that's a big factor in itself. So I'm just going to have to say we out. But I'm in on this being the best chance at it happening if it were to happen.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, we're going on 36 years since there's been even one. So I'm not going to say back-to-back. I feel really strongly that they can get at least one. But the question is, do they go back-to-back? I have to be out on that. And kind of going back to what we were talking about with that last question, DK, Georgia would have been the number 5 seed the last 2 years in the playoffs. So think about that. Like you've got Georgia sitting outside the top 4 because they lost conference championship games. But that's, like you talk about that team, just like last year, they missed the playoff because they lost at a conference championship game. That's the kind of thing that you potentially are going to have to deal with this expanded playoff, the fact that you get that. Okay, so same thing, same poster, Real Irish 1988. Notre Dame wins a championship in the next 2 years. Does this solidify independence for the long run for Notre Dame? You in or you out on that?
We out. I think their window, I think it's either this year or not next year, but the year after. I feel better about what's coming 3 seasons from now.
But I think the question is more about if Notre Dame wins a championship in the next 2 years, does it solidify the independence? What do you think about that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think that closes the door on a lot of naysayers and questions that people have, because basically people say Notre Dame needs to belong in a conference so they can play X opponents and get X and go on to make the playoff and win a national championship. So if you can prove that you can win a national championship while staying independent and that you don't need anything else and you have your own NBC contract, then I do think that it does solidify.
Yeah,
there's nothing to hurt it.
Yeah, I'm definitely in on that. Now, does the championship come in the next 2 years? Not sure about that. I think that they're still in the process of getting that built, but they're getting much closer to that in terms of a across the board championship roster and quarterback and the whole thing. If it happens, yes, I would say solidify the independence. But whether that happens in the next 2 years, probably out on that. Okay, from bracketed cover 3, a few different questions here. Let's start with this one. Linebackers will accumulate more sacks than defensive ends or Vipers in 2024. You in or you out on that one?
Just gonna have to say we out. Well, I think it'll be close. I think that Algon does a good job of mixing in linebackers in the pass rush situations. I just have more confidence in the defensive end and Vipers just because of where they play. It's just much harder to get a sack as a linebacker. You know what I mean? Like, defensive ends are rushing the passer every play. The linebacker is majority not, right? They're playing the run game and the pass game. So I'm just going to say we out because I believe that the defensive ends and Vipers have more of an opportunity.
And by my count, last year's defensive ends, the primary guys, had 13 sacks. The primary linebackers, 8 sacks. So, I mean, that kind of tells you right there. And that's still with Jordan Patello only having 4 sacks last year and Javonte Jean-Baptiste with 5. I think that there's just sort of a negative perception overall about Notre Dame's defensive ends and people just not being that hype on them, whereas people are a little bit more hyped. The fact you're going to get Drake Bowen and potentially more Jaden Osbury and Jalen Sneed and that whole crew out there. So I'm out on it as well. I still think that the defensive ends end up with more sacks than the linebackers this year. In or out on Notre Dame transfers in 2024 having a greater positive impact than the 2023 transfers? I'll just start off by saying I am definitely in on this, and primarily because of the fact that so many of them are at wide receiver, and they're going to be very significant. I think Riley Leonard is going to be more impactful than Sam Hartman was, and I also think Rod Hurd, the safety, is going to have a lot of impact as well. So I think it's through the roof. There's going to be a ton of impact from the transfers Notre Dame brought in this year.
Yeah, I'm also in on that, and largely because of really the same reasons. I think Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins at wide receiver are going to have a better impact. I think Riley Leonard is going to be a better quarterback than Sam Hartman if he remains healthy. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball. I think RJ Oben is a better athlete than what Javonte Jean-Baptiste was. I think he was further along as a defensive end. But you have to give credit to JBB because he had a really good season. He was really productive. I don't know if RJ Oben is going to get 5 sacks, right? And so I think JBB really capitalized on the situation. Again, I think that in the long run, RJ Oben might be a better defensive end. I just don't know if he's going to have quite the numbers that JBB had. And he was also really good in the run game last season. But also, like you said, and another person I'd add in there with Rod Hurd is Jordan Clark, both guys in the secondary who I think are going to have impact.
DK is calling 7 sacks for RJ Oben. I think Oben's going to have at least a comparable year to Jean-Baptiste, if not a little bit better than Jean-Baptiste had last year. I think it's going to be very comparable. I did forget about Thomas Harper last year, but, Harper had a really solid, probably underrated season. But because of the receivers and because of Riley Leonard, who I think is going to play better, and we're going to be talking about Riley Leonard specifically here in a minute, but I think that there's going to be a lot more impact from these transfers. I'll leave this one to you, Jesse, because he also says Sean Stiers is the most objective / non-biased commentator of the Irish Breakdown star-studded cast. Are you in? Are you out on that?
I would say I'm in on that. Definitely not Vince.
No, we know it's not Vince. Vince and objective are like, like the magnets repelling each other. Basically, that's there's no objectivity there. Oh, Ryan is shooting me through the heart, saying out on that. Ryan is going to try to claim the title. Got to remove the emotion from the equation. Stay as objective as possible. That's what you got to do. Irish for Life 99. Will Tyler Buckner ever see the field again in any capacity, even some gimmick play? In or out on that?
I don't want to infringe too much on rapid fire, so I'll leave more of my elaborated thought process on that for the rapid fire question. But I do think he will see the field in some capacity.
I think he'll see the field. It's much more likely to be a special teams play, I think, than anything, or a deep reserve type play than anything, especially this year. But I think he's got a really good shot, like at special teams and that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's going to go much farther than that. But you're right. There is more to come on Tyler Buckner and rapid fire, so we'll save it for that. He also wants to know, will Michigan be the first national championship team that doesn't even make it to a bowl game the next year? In or out on that?
As much as I would love for that to happen, I'm going to say we out. I don't think the drop-off will be that drastic. I think maybe even a week ago, we did our prediction of Michigan's schedule, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I have them right around 9-3. I think their floor is 8-4, and their ceiling is around 10-2. But they'll definitely be bowl eligible. And if they go 10-2 with the schedule that they have, they could be pushing another playoff berth next season.
There's enough cupcakes in there that they're, like you said. I think 8-4 is the floor, and we were kind of looking at it like I think we both think they're going to go around 9-3 when you look at who they play. But because you do have a first-year quarterback, a rookie head coach, just like Marcus Freeman a couple of years ago, all that stuff with Sharon Moore, that 8-4 is still a possibility. But you're going to a bowl game, 9-3, 8-4. So I've got to be out on that one as well. All right, now this one gets pretty deep here. So there's a lot to this one here. Excuse me, this is from Played Like a Champion. So Jayden Daniels' first season at LSU under offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, he completed 68.6% of his passes. He threw for 2,913 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, quarterback rating of 144.5, and he also ran for 885 yards with 11 touchdowns. So Riley Leonard will have a better statistical year this season under Mike Denbrock than Daniels had in 2022. We in or we out on that one?
I'm going to say we in on that one. I think that when Jayden Daniels came over and, his first season under Mike Denbrock, I think he was more raw than what Riley Leonard is right now. I think Riley Leonard was like when Jayden Daniels transferred, he was not mocked to be a first-round draft pick.
Correct.
Riley Leonard, when he transferred, before the injury, he was mocked to be a first-round quarterback. He was on the big board, right? And so I'm just going to say, for that reason, just being further along as a more equipped quarterback, that I would say he will have a better year statistically than Daniel's 2022 season.
Yeah, I am in on this as well because, for one, Riley Leonard has already had a season that is actually overall even better than what Jayden Daniels did in 22. And it was Riley Leonard's 2022. Daniels, again, he threw for 29-13. Riley Leonard threw for 29-67 that year in 2022 at Duke, and he threw 20 touchdown passes compared to Daniels with 17. So I'm definitely in on a better passing season. Question number 2 was Riley Leonard will have a better season running the football than Daniels had in 2022. Now remember, Daniels ran for nearly 900 yards. He ran for 885 yards and 11 touchdowns that season. So do you think Riley Leonard has a better rushing season this year than what Daniels had in 2022?
I'm going to say we out on that one because I think Notre Dame has a stable of running backs, first and foremost, that are very talented. I think as a runner, Daniels has more athleticism and is more dynamic than what Riley Leonard was. And I think Notre Dame is going to be very picky or situational about when they run Riley Leonard. They're not just going to run Riley Leonard to run him because of, prior injuries. I think there is some still part of this that is, yes, we are going to run you, but we are going to smartly run you and preserve you and make sure you are not taking unnecessary hits. And at the time, that wasn't the case for Daniels. So for all those reasons, I would have to say we out on Leonard having a better rushing season.
All those, and I think a couple things. One, because of I think you said it, but like Sloppy Joe is backing it up as well, because of Notre Dame's running backs who are better than what Riley Leonard had, in terms of running backs at Duke. That's going to take away from some of his opportunities. And I also think that there are like 5 games where Leonard is not going to be in the game in the fourth quarter this season. And that's going to take away from some of those opportunities. So I'm going to be out on this one. I can see in the 500 to 600 yard range, something like that, but I don't think he'll be over the 885 that Jayden Daniels had. So I am out on that one. And then the third question, and the second follow-up to this, Leonard will have a better overall year, any way you choose to measure it, than Daniels did in 2022. To clarify, you can choose the criteria. It can be win-loss record, subjective evaluation, offense's performance overall. Any other factors you decide is most important. Will Riley Leonard's 2024 be better than Jayden Daniels' 2022 season?
Yeah, I'm in on that. I think that he'll have a better statistical season. LSU finished that season, I want to say 10-4 because they played for the SEC championship and then went on to a bowl game. And they lost the SEC championship. So I would have to say, I'm going to have to say we out because I do believe Notre Dame is going to make the playoffs, and I do think that Riley Leonard.
I thought you said you were in first, and then did you change it to you're out?
No, Riley Leonard, I'm in on – sorry, I was out on Daniels. I'm just going to backtrack completely. I am in on Riley Leonard having a better season.
Okay.
I think he's going to statistically,
I think you
and as a team-wise, he's going to make the playoffs.
Yes, I agree with that. I think the passing numbers will probably be pretty similar. Again, I don't think the rushing numbers will be as great, but, like in terms of overall touchdowns and all that kind of stuff, like Jayden Daniels, when you look at his season, he had 28 total touchdowns. Riley Leonard, that same season, had 33 total touchdowns. And I think that something that is very interesting is like Riley Leonard was sacked only 13 times in 2022. He was sacked 7 times in 7 games last year. And he's going to have a much better offensive line that's going to keep him a lot cleaner, and those running backs and all the weapons that he's going to have to throw to. So I think that no matter how you boil it down from an overall statistical standpoint, it might look fairly similar to Jayden Daniels. I think the touchdown numbers are going to be greater, though. And I think that from a win-loss standpoint, that's how Riley Leonard is ultimately going to be judged. And I think that you're going to say, yes, he had a better season than Daniels had in that 2022 season. Carberry says, hopefully we add 500 passing yards to Leonard's stats with less rushing. And I'm really curious to see what that's going to look like. And again, I think that because of some competition, He's not necessarily going to be in there in the fourth quarter a lot to sort of pad those stats. So I think that maybe you weigh that as well. But he's going to be at least 3,000 passing yards, like right in that range, I think, again this season.
So my thing with the running is I think he needs to run enough that teams respect it. That's really ultimately what I'm looking for out of that is teams have to game plan for it. You have to either commit another player to the box or not. And whether or not they run it is up to them. But I think you have to get teams to respect it as a legitimate threat where, okay, you think we're not going to run? You're going to let that guy play, basically cheat out towards the wide receiver and not be in the box? Okay, then we are going to run the ball, right? I think that's the type of situation I'm looking for from Notre Dame and Riley Leonard running the ball.
Decaf says, good Lord, it's like the end of days outside, a bad thunderstorm. I know, like right as I was coming in here, the storms were starting to roll through where I am. It is supposed to be bad for the next few hours where we are here in South Bend. All right, a few here from Balpine Shalele. The Notre Dame wide receiver room under Mike Brown is the most productive it's been in the past decade. Are you in or out on that? So before you start, I went back and I looked at the last decade to kind of look at what the wide receiver production looked like. Would you like me to put that up on the screen here?
Yes.
All right. So let's see if I can do this here. Let's see. Where are we going to go? Okay, so I think I'm going to have to switch. Okay, now I'm going to share. I'm going to go here. Now, all right, so apparently I can't share that because it's on Pages, so it's not going to let me. Let me see if I can do. All right. Technology is bogging us down here right now. Just let me see if I can do this here real quick and throw something up on screen. Let's see what I can do. No, it's not going to let me do that. Of course. Okay, so I'll just kind of here's what I would say. We know that last year was not a good wide receiver year, right?
Right.
We know the year before was not a good wide receiver year under Tommy Rees, right?
Correct.
2021, again, under Tommy Rees. Michael Mayer leads the team in receptions with 71, 840 yards, 7 touchdowns. Kevin Austin is the leading wide receiver, which that seems like a long lost name. Austin, 48 catches, 888 yards. 2020, again, Tommy Rees and Michael Mayer is leading the team. The top wide receiver for the Irish in 2020, Javon McKinley, 42 catches, 717 yards. 2019, this is the one that I go back to. Well, no, this is not the one that I go back to. Chase Claypool had over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. So, nice season for a wide receiver. This is the one I go back to, though. 2018, the last what I would call really respectable wide receiver season for Notre Dame. Miles Boykin, 59 catches, 872 yards, 8 touchdowns. Chase Claypool, 50 catches, 639 yards, 4 touchdowns. Chris Fink, 49 catches, 571 yards, 2 touchdowns. So you've got 3 receivers, all over 500 yards, all in the 50-plus receiving range. That's kind of what I'm expecting, at least for this year's group this season. Would you buy or sell that?
Yeah, I would buy that. And, you brought up that season. Another season that I kind of looked at was Will Fuller's season back in 2015 where he had 1,300 yards. Chris Brown also added, I think, 600 to 700 yards that season. So those are the two, because the question was the last.
But then
decade,
you drop
right?
off to Amir Carlisle, 32 catches, 355 yards. So the question was the most productive it's been in the past decade. I think you can go back to 2018 though, and that's the season. You don't have to go back a full decade, I guess, is my point. So I think you go back to 2018 where you had three guys who were right around 50 catches in 2018. That's the season I would look at. Boykin, Claypool, Fink, 59 receptions, 50 receptions, 49 receptions, 14 total touchdowns between those guys. And then you had the tight ends, Alizé Mack and Cole Kmet, who were after them, 36 catches, 15 catches. I think that is easily attainable, that 2018 team.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the of those five guys that you name, Miles Boykin, Chase Claypool, Chris Fink, Alizé Mack, Cole Kmet, 4 of those guys were drafted. That's a very solid roster that season. And so does Notre Dame have the talent, under Mike Brown with this wide receiver room to surpass those numbers? I do believe that they do. And really, it's a very similar season outside of Chase Claypool because, Miles Boykin, that was his breakout year. And Alizé Mack and Cole Kmet, those were kind of their coming to, the moment type season. I think that's the type of situation they have this upcoming season with Notre Dame. So you have a bunch of guys, yes, the talent is there, but they're really, at the end of the day, not proven. The numbers aren't there yet, right? And so
yeah,
I think that this is the room since the 2018, since the 2015 season to give them their best shot. And do I believe that it will end up being more productive at the end of the day? I do, because I think Riley Leonard is a dynamic quarterback, and I think that Mike Denbrock is really going to be a better offensive coordinator than what Tommy Rees was. And so for those reasons, I'm going to have to say that they are going to have a more productive wide receiver room.
Completely in on that. I'm completely, again, I think it's going to be at least comparable to that 2018 team in terms of overall wide receiver production. Another receiver question from Balpine Shalala. One of Colsey, KK Smith, or Micah Gilbert has a bit of an unexpected breakout season and ends the season with 4+ touchdowns. I'm just going to go out on this because I think that there are too many other guys, who are I can see one of these guys having a couple of touchdown catches, but I can't see 4.
I think Colsey has the best shot, but I don't think he gets to 4. So I'm going to say we out.
I actually think Gilbert has the best shot, but I'm still out on this. And then he also says this season the linebackers show elite production. Coach Max Bulla earns himself a raise so that nobody steals him from Notre Dame. We in or we out on that?
Oh, I'm in on the linebackers having a really good season. I'm in on Coach Bulla being a really good linebacker coach in Notre Dame, doing what they can to retain him. I think that they have a ton of talent. I think this room is quite honestly ready to burst in terms of production this season.
I'm in on the production from the linebackers. I don't know that it necessarily turns into a raise for Max Bulla right away because I don't, it's still his first year as a full-time head coach. He's doing great on the recruiting trail, which is awesome. He's doing, I think in the spring and really last year as well, he showed that he's great with the coaching and development of the guys at the position. I don't know that it's going to turn into a raise after year 1 though, but I think the production is going to be great. Not doubting that at all. Tommy wants to know why I don't have a basement. Because I moved into a house without a basement. Asked me if I like that fact. I don't necessarily know about that. Do I at least have a storm cellar? I don't. We have a crawl space. So, I'm going to the bathroom, I guess, going to the shower if things go awry. To run for cover. Okay, we're not going to do any recruiting stuff. We're not going to try to make any predictions on that unless Ryan, since he's hiding, he's lurking there in the chat right now, unless he wants to answer this. Ivan Taylor ends up signing with Notre Dame. I'll let Ryan answer that in the chat, and if he can, wants to answer that in the chat, he can. if he's in or out on Ivan Taylor signing with Notre Dame. Otherwise, we'll answer the rest of the question from Chuck's Fupa. In or out on special teams being the weakest link for Notre Dame this season.
I'm just going to say we out because, I mean, weakest link, it's so hard because, like, you're basically thinking offense, defense, special teams. I don't think Notre Dame's defense is going to be bad. I think Notre Dame's offense is going to be good. And so I think the special teams naturally might be, quote unquote, the weakest link, but I still think it's going to be a very good unit for Notre Dame. I don't see it as a weakness, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
But I think there's a ton of young talent that they're going to get on special teams, a lot of athleticism. So yeah, I'm just going to say we out because I don't think it's going to be weak overall.
Well, I'm going to say in because of what you're saying. Like, they can all be really good, but one of them has to be, just by nature, not all, unless they're all absolutely elite, by definition, one of them has to be at the bottom of the pecking order, right? And I think that the defense is going to be elite. I think the offense is going to be borderline elite. I think special teams is going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be in the elite range. So, again, I'm not saying they're going to be weak, but if I'm ranking the three, I would definitely put the special teams at the bottom of the three. So just by that measure, I'm going in on this. CJ Carr starts a game for Notre Dame in 2024. Big out for me.
We out.
Happening. Notre Dame women make it to the Final Four next season. In or out on that?
We in.
Definitely in on that. I've been calling for that. And we've got a women's basketball question coming up in rapid fire as well. And also, 5 different running backs score a touchdown for Notre Dame in the 24 season. In or out on that?
5 different running backs score a rushing touchdown. So let me just pull up the depth chart so I can make sure I give everyone, their proper due diligence here. Jeremiah Love is going to score. Jadarian Price is going to score. I think one of Kyren Young or Anais Williams will score. So we're up to 3. And really that's the end of, scholarship running back. So like, are we saying 5 different players rush for a touchdown? Or are we literally only
Devin Ford's
backs?
back over there as well. So he's the 5th one, technically.
I'm going to say we out then because I don't think both freshmen get one, and I don't think Devin Ford gets one.
Right.
But I think you get 3 of 5.
I agree. I think 3, maybe 4, just depending on blowout type situation, that kind of stuff. So I've got to be out on 5, but I think, you're in the ballpark for 3. Andrew says, why don't they leave Price at kick returner? I mean, they still could, but he's also going to be primary, one of the 2 primary running backs. So the question is, do you want the guy who's going to be getting, taking that many hits, getting that many reps at running back, also being on, kickoff return? But you also brought in Jayden Harrison from Marshall to be one of your primary kick return guys, and you probably just put Devin Ford over there as well, because again, like, do you really want Jadarian Price taking the extra hits? I think that would be the big question, but he could still end up there for that matter. In terms of Ivan Taylor, Ryan says, ask him after this weekend. Okay, so now you've got a show to listen to next week when Ryan tells you what he thinks is going to happen with Ivan Taylor.
Ryan.
Yeah, visit coming up. In or out on Notre Dame having at least 2 shutouts this year?
Let me pull up the schedule again.
Well,
I should just have this thing memorized at this point. But
so Notre Dame's last shutout, 44-0 against Boston College in 2022. Before that, against Georgia Tech in 2021. Before that, Bowling Green in 2019. Before that, Michigan in 2014. So 4 shutouts dating back to the 2014 season. It's hard to get even 1 shutout, let alone 2, even if you've got 2 MAC schools and the service academies on there. And what typically happens is, what blows shutouts a lot, and that, this keeps high school coaches a lot of times, many high school coaches, from putting reserves on at the end of games because, they want style points and they don't want to lose the opportunity for the shutout. But what's going to happen is if you're up big, what's Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff going to do? They're going to empty the bench out there. They're going to put a lot of reserves in. And that's typically, that's part of what keeps you from getting a shutout. And then the other thing is the other side will do anything they can. Look at Navy. Look at Syracuse a few years back. They'll do anything they can to avoid being shut out. So they'll kick a meaningless field goal at the end of the game. So I think it's hard enough just to get one, let alone two. So I've got to be out on it, regardless of what the schedule looks like.
So looking at the schedule, I would say that Notre Dame has 4 legitimate shots at shutouts: Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Navy, and Army. Those are probably the games that you feel best about getting one. I'm just going to say we in on this. I think they get one against the MAC, and I think they get one against the Service Academy. So
pretty bold.
I'm going to roll the dice and say we in on this one.
Okay, Jesse's going in. I am going out for the reasons that I just spelled out.
I wish we had someone that was like a tracker that just tracked all of our different –
That is something, when I put up
the season, we go through and see who has like the most points or whatever.
Well, what's keeping you from tracking these?
Well, I can't write and talk and, do all those. I think we need a listener to be our tracker.
Ah, interesting. I feel like DK or Tommy is like prime for that kind of stuff.
That's what I mean.
Yes. I think somebody, when we were talking about the anniversary, when I put up the thread on the anniversary of the show, and I was asking for like things that people would want, to have us do on the show. I think that they said, basically keep track of that kind of stuff. To me, it's like, it's all right. We got to make predictions every day. Do we really need to track it as well?
I think like the big stuff, you know what I mean? Like the stuff, like the hard, like the actual numbers of things.
See, I mean, this is the problem. We can't afford anybody quality, like Joe is saying there. In or out on Marcus Freeman getting a contract extension at the end of the season?
I'm going to say we out unless he wins a national championship.
Ooh, I'm going to go in because I think that if he wins at least one playoff game, he's going to get some kind of extension. So you're out. I'm in. Speaking of Joe, in or out, that according to Pro Football Focus, Riley Leonard is a top 5 Heisman contender.
I'm going to say we in because I think that ultimately at the end of the day, this is a quarterback basically award, right? So who are the other quarterbacks out there competing with Riley Leonard? Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders. See, that's 3. Carson Beck, the quarterback from Georgia. That's 4. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback, 5. Dylan Gabriel, that's quarterback 6. Cam Ward, quarterback 7. And then Riley Leonard, quarterback 8. So all you have to say out of that is Riley Leonard going to be a top 5 quarterback from all the names that I just listed. And I'm just going to have to say, yeah, because I think when you have success at a school like Notre Dame with the brand, you go to the playoffs, you win a game, that goes a long way. And so I think that's enough to propel him along with a good, individual season to be a top 5 candidate.
DK says he's tracking everything, by the way. His favorite Sean quote, "I don't go in hard on freshmen." All right, there you go. I'm in on this as well. I've said if Notre Dame has the kind of season that I think they will, Riley Leonard is going to be very successful, and he will, at the very least, be a Heisman finalist this season. So there's something that can come back on me when it's all said and done. Rhino 1285, with the talk of scheduling for the future, scheduling 2 SEC schools, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, 2 Big Ten schools, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. Rotate these 8 schools for home and homes. In or out on that scheduling question?
We out on that one because that also you'd have to also include USC. So now we're talking about 5 of 12 opponents being, however you want to say it, probably top 25 type, like expectations at least every season, whether or not it happens for all of these schools. But these are top 25 programs essentially. I don't think Notre Dame needs to do that to themselves. Look what Michigan did last year. They had an easy schedule. They weren't punished for it. And so if you're Notre Dame, why make your life harder? As a fan, would I love to see this schedule? Like, would I love to see Notre Dame play, more of these type of teams? Sure, but I would take it down to one SEC school, one Big Ten school, keep USC, and then rotate the rest of the 9 opponents.
Well, don't forget, because as you said, USC is a Big Ten school, but we're assuming USC is going to stay on there every year. So we're kind of like talking about one additional Big Ten school. And you're absolutely, okay, if one of the Big Ten schools is Purdue, and then I'm adding an Alabama, which is going to happen in a few years, you're going to get an Alabama on the schedule. Okay. But yeah, they don't need to over schedule because of what you're talking about. It's like, do you want to actually be in the college football playoff, or do you want an attractive schedule that's, gonna feel a little bit more fun because you're playing these big games like they used to 30 years ago? Because remember, 30 years ago, they didn't even have a BCS championship game, let alone a playoff where you have to go through multiple rounds to advance in the playoff and ultimately try to win a national championship. So I think they can still put together a schedule that's not going to kill them and keep them out of the playoff, but at the same time challenge them enough so that they can make a strong case for themselves on a yearly basis to get into the playoff, as well as again challenge themselves so that once they get in the playoff, they haven't just played a bunch of cream puffs, and they'll be prepared once they get there to play some good teams. And part of this as well is, okay, you've still got at least for right now, you've still got the 5 ACC teams that you're going to play. And that means that you still have a rotation with the Florida States and the Clemsons on there that are going to continue to provide some challenge as well. So I don't think you need to greatly beef up the degree of difficulty that's going to make it too hard just for the sake of having some, better looking, kind of attractive schedule for fans and stuff like that. And TV, I guess, really, for that matter. Ballpeen says, largely due to Mike Denbrock's addition to the coaching squad, Notre Dame sees a stint of elite offensive and defensive production, which solidifies them as a top 5 team yearly. In or out on that?
I'm going to say we out. I just think it's consistent. To be a consistent top 5, basically net team, offensive and defensively, is really challenging. Even some of the best teams don't do that. Like Michigan's offense, I don't think was considered a top 5 offense last season, while their defense was a top 5 defense. I think if you pose this question as top 10, I would say we in, but I just think top 5 is a little bit too sharp for me. But, realistically, what it comes down to is, can Notre Dame answer at the quarterback position to be a top 5 offense every year? And that's the big challenge right now for Denbrock, Marcus Freeman, and Gino Guidugli going forward, is once Riley Leonard is done this season, are you going to develop CJ Carr and Deuce Knight enough that they will have the ability to continuously carry this team to be a top 5 offense, year in and year out?
So I didn't hear anything you said. I had to step out here for just a second, but I did hear you. I guess I did hear you say you're out. The bottom. I
said out because top 5 is too sharp. I'd be in on top 10.
That was going to be exactly what I was going to say. I'm out on top 5, but I'm in on top 10. And if you're top 10, you're in and you're out. You're in the playoff and you got a shot. So guaranteeing that you're going to be a top 5, I think that is to, one, are you going to hold the whole staff to get, because the more success you have, the more your staff starts turning over. I mean, we've already started to see it and Marcus Freeman has had modest success in the first couple of years. They haven't been to the playoff yet, and he's already lost staff and had, different teams and from different levels, both NFL and college, come at other coaches as well. His special teams coordinator got hired by the NFL. His safeties coach got hired by the NFL, So, so top 10, I think very realistic. Top 5, a little bit too steep, I think, right now. Bill, a new member of the Champions Lounge, by the way. We in or we out. Both Charles Jagasaw and Billy Schrouth will make at least third-team All-American this season, with Jagasaw becoming a first-team freshman All-American. In or out on that?
I'm going to say we out. The and is what makes that hard because you need both of them. I think you could potentially see Jagasaw, and I do believe Jagasaw has a good chance to be definitely a freshman All-American.
Yeah, I would be in on the freshman All-American, but there is an and in there, right? So that's the only thing that keeps me from saying this whole thing I am in on. Both Jagasaw and Schrouth making at least third team. I'm going to go out on that just because there's so much subjectivity there, and when you've got there's just so much that comes with it. So I'm going to be out on that. I would say one of them makes at least third team All-American. I could be in on that. Jagasaw first team freshman All-American, I'd say really good chance. So I'll go in on that as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement on all of that.
Yeah. Peruvian Irish. In or out, Notre Dame's ranked seeding and matchups in the 12-team playoff format the next 2 years will result in some national pundits claiming Notre Dame unfairly benefits from the no-bye rule versus the current view that Notre Dame is hurt by not getting a bye. I think this is, you're looking for a reason, to feel some national bias that's not there. So I'm going to go out on this. I don't think it'll ever be viewed as, you're getting a benefit by not getting that first round bye.
I think the only way this happens is if they continuously get first round byes and they're playing snow globe games in South Bend every season. I think that's the only way it could become a talking point. But outside of that,
that's a good point. They get to get people up there in that snow.
Right.
Yep. Offensive line will perform better than many expect due to the caliber of opposition they face daily at practice. In or out on that?
I'm actually going to be in on that. I think when you have a young offensive line, the best thing you can do is challenge them every day. And what better way to challenge them when RJ Oben, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, guys who are proven players. Jordan Botello, not so much. I don't think he really will challenge those guys too much, but that's just me. Sorry, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm going to go in on this. It typically happens is it's just cyclical. Whereas there's always one of those two units is supposed to be better than the other, and then kind of what ends up happening is because you're going against that good competition every day, the other side starts raising its game, and it's like, man, how good is this? And the other side of this is like, man, is this line this good, or is that other line that bad? That kind of stuff. But I think that ultimately that as good as Notre Dame's defensive line is, it is going to make the offensive line better. And we didn't necessarily get to see that in the spring because of the fact that Howard Cross and Riley Mills, the two old men, on the defensive line, they would get some days off. And so they weren't necessarily banging heads in there all the time. And they were rotating some different guys in on the offensive line. But I think by the time training camp rolls around, it's going to start to see a little different, look a little different when you see some of that good on good, as they like to say. Michigan and Penn State both missed the college football playoff this year, and Alabama, I guess these are two separate questions. Michigan and Penn State both missed the college football playoff. Bama and LSU both missed the college football playoff. In or out on all that? I'm in on Michigan and Penn State missing the playoff. I'm out on Bama and LSU both missing the playoff?
Yes, that's exactly how I was going to answer it.
Okay. This is a recruiting question, so we don't need that. And that's that.
We made it.
A lot of good we in, we outs today. Man, we went for a bit on that, didn't we? Some really good stuff, though.
Yes, we did.
What that means, Jesse, is I have a question to ask you.
Uh-oh.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Right, here we go. After Tyler Buchner was brought back to the Notre Dame football team as a walk-on wide receiver, there are still some fans who are clinging to the idea that he'll eventually move back to quarterback. So, scale of 1 to 10, what chance do you give that to ever happen for Tyler Buchner?
0. I don't think Tyler Buchner will ever play another snap at the quarterback position. I think that was made very known to him. I think they have a very direct path for what they want to do going forward at the quarterback position. Tyler Buchner was a Tommy Rees recruit and quarterback. I think that, again, the vision is CJ Carr, Deuce Knight, and I think those quarterbacks and the style that they play are not drastically, but they're different than what Tyler Buchner brings to the table. So I think you would be regressing by trying to kind of ultimately force him back into the quarterback position.
Yeah, like if we were going we in or we out, I think we're definitely both out on this. And, I'll give it the 1 just, on the off, and I'll get to why I'm leaving it as a 1. But when he came to Marcus Freeman with this, to ask if he could come back, Marcus Freeman didn't just sit there and go, yeah. It didn't happen. He said, let's address this at a later date. Marcus Freeman went and talked to some guys on the team and talked to his coaching staff and all this different stuff. He was allowed to come back because, they like Tyler Buchner, the guy. And it's not that they don't like Tyler Buchner, the quarterback, but Tyler Buchner left him hanging last year. We've talked about this before. If Tyler Buchner had stayed to plan, Riley Leonard might not even be here right now. Tyler Buchner might be sitting at number 1 on the depth chart going into this season. But he decided to follow Tommy Rees to Alabama and left Notre Dame hanging. And now it's like, look, we've moved on without you, right? It's like, the girlfriend doesn't just get to come back in a year and say, hey, take me back once you've already got another girlfriend. I mean, I guess she can, but obviously, if you got any brains, if she left you high and dry, you're not going to take her back. But I mean, look at the quarterback room that they've got right now. We've talked about how great it looked during the spring. It's arguably the best quarterback room from 1 through 4 that they've ever had. So where does Tyler Buchner fit into any of that? And next spring, you're most likely going to be adding Deuce Knight to the mix, right? So where does Tyler Buchner fit into any of that? Here's the only scenario where I could see the possibility, and I still don't think he would ever play at the position, but here's the only possibility I could see. You get to the end of this season, like this season is over. Riley Leonard is obviously going to leave. CJ Carr, everybody's talking about CJ Carr. And you do have Deuce Knight coming in. So what happens if Steve Angeli and Kenny Menchie both decide to transfer this offseason, even if it's at the end of next spring? That obviously, from a numbers standpoint, you are going to at least need a body in that number 3 spot where you've got CJ Carr at the top, Deuce Knight right behind him. You still need a body. Even if it's just like a camp arm, to throw balls in the spring or whatever it happens to be. It's typically going to be a walk-on. That is the only scenario where I could see Buchner back in that spot, but that doesn't mean I think he's ever going to play. I think he's always going to be a walk-on. I don't think he's going to move.
Oh, boy. I would venture to guess that the large storms rolling through the house right now just cut all the power because it looks like all the power went out, which means the internet went out, which means that he ultimately. Oh, there you are.
We lost power for a second.
I got it right. I was like, I
flickered
bet they
off.
lost power.
Yeah. So I pulled out the phone hotspot. So my internet is rebooting right now otherwise, but I've got the phone hotspot that I'm running off.
I was very afraid because one, I started to just blab on a little bit because I knew that you were out of power. And I was like, do I need to call Vince or Brian, because who's going to hop in and finish this thing with me?
So facilitate in form. I mean, he is obviously
he's going to play, but he's not going to play quarterback.
Yeah, that's like, you think he's actually going to play quarterback? Tyler Buchner is never playing quarterback again for Notre Dame. And, like, I know DK is saying, oh, okay, is this Vince? We're dealing in absolutes. Can you hear that, or is that just me, by the way?
I just heard it a tiny bit. Nothing crazy, though.
Okay. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. That's not why he was allowed back on the team. And they have moved on, because every quarterback in the room right now is a better quarterback than Tyler Buchner.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, if it's CJ Carr and Deuce Knight and those other guys were to transfer next year, in that scenario, I could see them potentially moving Buchner back into that room, just because you've got to have at least 3 quarterbacks, if not 4 quarterbacks. That's the only way that I could see him being back at the position, is if a couple guys transfer and they need to have another quarterback. But, it's like all these different, 3 quarterback drills and everything else that they do. And you've got to have that extra arm. That's the only way that I could see it happening. But I don't see him ever actually taking any kind of meaningful snap at quarterback for Notre Dame. That's not happening. That's not why he was allowed back on the team. So scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances he ever throws another pass in a game for Notre Dame? I guess I already answered that question. I forgot that I had that question coming up next. What chances do you give him to actually throw a pass, though, at Notre Dame? Maybe I didn't answer it, because there's different ways you can look at this.
I'm going to go, the chances he throws a pass, I'm going to go 10 out of 10, because I do think at some point they're going to draw up kind of a gadget play that involves him being out at wide receiver, kind of getting lost in the mix, people not really realizing, oh, hey, that's Tyler Buchner. Maybe he lines up at tight end too. I don't know. But I think there's going to be some sort of trick play where he ends up throwing a throwback pass, or, maybe the wide receiver takes a pitch and throws it out to him, and then the other wide receiver is streaking down the field completely unmarked. There's going to be some sort of pass play. And I wouldn't be surprised, too, if we saw a Tyler Buchner maybe package play at the end of the day, where he comes in and, again, he's not playing quarterback, but he comes in for one play maybe as a decoy. Again, some sort of gadget play, trick play, and I think he does throw at least one pass this season.
Yeah, haven't we all moved past the, he could be a great Wildcat quarterback, that's, how many guys do we hear that for? Like every halfway decent athlete, right? Oh, the Wildcat package. How much do you actually see the Wildcat package?
Not as much anymore.
No, you don't. And, again, like, I just don't see Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman putting together this Tyler Buchner package. I just don't see, like you said, does he get on the field in some way, and maybe there's some kind of gadget play? Maybe. Again, it's more likely to be in a blowout situation, especially this year. Like, we'll wait and see what next year looks like when next year gets here, because rosters are obviously always fluid and things can change over time. But I don't see it. I don't see it. Like, why do you got to have a Wildcat package for Tyler Buchner when you have an athlete like Kenny Minchey who's on scholarship? Kenny Minchey can run. Now, is he as fast in the open field as Tyler Buchner? Probably not, but legs are his strength as well. You've got a third-string quarterback right now who can also run. So why do you need a Wildcat package for Tyler Buchner? I just don't see all these exotic packages coming, especially when you have Riley Leonard. As long as Riley Leonard is the starting quarterback, then you don't need a package for another quarterback. It's, I don't see it happening. So the chances that he ever throws another pass, I'd give it a 2. On the off chance that, they do throw him out there and run some kind of trick play, but actual quarterbacks and wildcats and all that kind of stuff, I don't see it. Double fill in the blank. After the ACC SEC Basketball Challenge matchups were announced, the Notre Dame men playing at Georgia this season is blank. And the Irish women hosting Texas is blank.
So Notre Dame men's basketball playing Georgia is fun, but not overly exciting. I mean, Georgia was a 20-17 team last year. They made the NIT. And so while it's a fun opponent that Notre Dame hasn't played often, it's nothing super exciting. Like, Georgia's not an elite basketball program. They're not known to be an elite basketball program. But on the flip side, the women hosting Texas is electric. That's a team that went 33-5 last season, lost in the Elite Eight to NC State, who Notre Dame handled towards the end of the season. I'm pretty sure, did Texas get a number 1 or were they a 2?
I think 2, but don't quote me.
Again, either way, a team that, finished better than Notre Dame.
Went to the Elite Eight.
Went to the Elite Eight. You know what I mean? I just think that's a good test. And a team that, again, the women don't play regularly and is just probably going to be a top 10 matchup when Texas rolls into town. So, again, I think that one's electric. And while the Georgia game is fun, it's just not nearly as electric as what that Notre Dame women's game against Texas is going to be.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I'm a little surprised, to be quite honest, that Notre Dame and Georgia are playing each other. Like you said, Georgia went to the NIT, and they didn't just go to the NIT. They won games in the NIT. They got all the way to the NIT Final Four before they lost to Seton Hall. And, of course, Seton Hall ended up winning the whole thing with their win over Indiana State. So it's a little, they usually, when they draw these things, try to match up teams that are fairly equal. So Notre Dame, Georgia, I don't think it's necessarily that equal, but that's who they got. So it'll be a nice little opportunity for Micah Shrewsbury and his crew in early December to go down there to Athens.
I do like that, because I do think that that's like a good gauge at the beginning of the season where you're kind of at, right?
Yeah. And like you said, the women's, I mean, you've got 2 teams who are going to go into the season legitimately having, at least Final Four, if not national championship aspirations. And the fact that you get it here, and I had, it's still with all these teams changing conferences. When I saw that the SEC ACC matchups were going to be coming out, Texas didn't even register in my mind. It's like, I'm wondering, are they going to get South Carolina? And then I saw somebody else got South Carolina. Oh, are they going to get Tennessee again? Nope, that didn't happen. They get the other orange tee instead. They get Texas, and they come here. So, I mean, that should be a sold-out Purcell Pavilion when the women host Texas. That should just be a knockdown, drag-out, really fun matchup in early December when those 2 teams play. So, definitely looking forward to that. Kind of along the same lines, fill in the blank. It's blank that when I asked Hannah Hidalgo this week what would make next season a successful one, her answer was a championship.
It's the appropriate mentality, because I think this next season is the accumulation of, 1, a lot of frustration, and 2, a abundance of talent. And so when you combine a team that's hungry, that feels like they, have let down or had some disappointing finishes in the past 2 seasons in the Sweet 16. And then you combine that again with, what they're getting from the transfer portal, what they're getting from, players that they've recruited that are coming in as a freshman. You combine all that together, I think it's the right mentality. And I think it's appropriate for the situation that, we're not going to be satisfied with really anything other than championship, because we know what's in this room and what's in this roster this season.
Yeah, and it's like, look, if you set your expectation, Elite Eight, because that's a step farther than the Sweet 16, or our expectation is the Final Four. Well, maybe the road ends in one of those stops. But if your expectation is to win it all, I think that mentality goes a long way. Just having that mental picture of our expectation going into this season is a national championship, and anything less is not going to be considered successful. I think it's a great mentality to have. I wasn't necessarily expecting her to come out and just say a championship. Like I said, I thought, well, Final Four, whatever it happens to be. But championship or bust is what it sounds like, at least from the mentality of one of the best players in the country, Hannah Hidalgo. And I mean, as we continue to talk about, the talent is there, and they're going to have a stacked, loaded roster heading into next season. So Tom Brady said on the SI Media podcast that he thinks he'll be pretty critical of players when he makes his debut as an NFL analyst on Fox this season. What is the number one thing that you want from a game analyst, Jesse?
The number one thing I want from a game analyst is authenticity. Authenticity in who you are, right? And authenticity as an analyst. I don't need you sucking up to players or being a homer because, you played for certain teams or, whatever it is. I just want you to be as authentic as possible while still delivering an enjoyable product. Like, you don't need to sit up there and be Scrooge the whole time and just be miserable, right? Like, there's still got to be some sort of fun to your analyst, but at the same time, I just want you to be authentic. I want you to tell it how it is, and I want you to integrate your knowledge into it as well.
Yeah, first and foremost, the number one thing is don't annoy me. I think that is the biggest thing. Don't be annoying. And I know that I don't know if you've heard, there's kind of a resurgence of Drew Brees trying to make his way back into a broadcast booth, and like Drew Brees ultimately annoyed me when it was all said and done, because he just wasn't willing to analyze anything. It was almost like he was, like paralysis by analysis or whatever. Like, that was annoying. And there are other guys who just annoy you because they say things that don't really matter. So don't annoy me is number one. But number two is, like, I don't want to say teach me something, but at the same time, like, tell me why things are happening, whether it is an X and O standpoint on the field or what a coach might be thinking, what the quarterback might be thinking, because Tom Brady is obviously going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Tell me why things are happening. That's the biggest thing. Like being critical of the players and stuff like that. That's whatever. I don't necessarily, need that analyst to be critical, as long as he is doing a good job of not annoying me and telling me why things are happening over the course of a game. So the Big 12 is exploring selling its naming rights to a title sponsor with the potential revenue of hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of the deal. The commercial sponsor would potentially take the name Big out of Big 12 and replace it with the sponsor's name. So, for example, like Allstate is the name that I saw floated out there. Instead of the Big 12, it would be the Allstate 12, potentially. So do you buy or sell corporate conference names?
I buy it because at the end of the day, it's just a name. It's just a label. Like, what significance does Big have on me? You know what I mean? Or what?
Right. How many bigs do you need, right? You got the Big West, the Big East, like Big 12, whatever, Big 10.
Or like Mountain or Atlantic or, just go down the line. It really doesn't matter to me because at the end of the day, it's just a name. And so, like, do I like the traditional aspect of, keeping these conferences? Sure. But again, we've entered this stage where college athletics is revolving around one thing, and that's the money. And so if they get more sponsors to slap their name in front of their conference, that at the end of the day, that has no impact on me. That does nothing. That doesn't take anything away from me. It's still the same teams in the conferences. It's still, about the teams playing themselves and the product on the field. So the name has no impact on the game itself. And so if it's stupid, yeah, I don't disagree, but it doesn't have any impact. So I'm just going to buy it for that reason.
It's ultimately what they choose to name their conference. Like you said, it's just a word at the end of the day, and you're replacing one word with another word. What's the difference if it's the Big 12 or the All-State 12 or the State Farm 12 or whatever it happens to be? It's the Manscaped SEC. You've already got Cheez-It bowls and Pop-Tarts bowls and Mercedes-Benz domes and the whole, the corporate names are everywhere. So what difference does it make? And look, it's the Big 12 that's doing this. The ACC should be hunting this down as well. The Big 12 and the ACC, in comparison to the SEC and the Big 10, they're still trying to make up ground from a revenue standpoint, right? So if I'm them, I'm doing everything I can. If the ACC hasn't already been doing this, they need to be all over it. Because, look, they've got to try to keep their constituents happy. The constituents are the schools and the programs in there. And, obviously there's all this noise, specific to the ACC, about Florida State and Clemson wanting to leave. You come up with a better revenue stream, whether it's TV or wherever, you can hopefully keep them happier longer. So I'll be curious, if schools and programs actually do it, are we going to have the First Source Bank Purdue Boilermakers here in the near future? Or, that's what I want to see. But I have no problem. They all have to find ways to make money, and money is what keeps everybody happy. So why not? So you sent me this one, Jess, and this one was floating around out there on social media today. Would you rather play one round as Scotty Scheffler or one game as Patrick Mahomes?
This when I first thought about it, I thought it was going to be easy, and I thought the obvious answer was going to be Patrick Mahomes. But, I think I've closed that chapter overall in my life. Football's done. I was never an offensive player, definitely never a quarterback. And so while it's definitely, the most glorified position in the sport, I'm going to have to go play around as Scotty Scheffler because golf is what I'm more into recently. And I would love to shoot around like Scotty, essentially. I couldn't even dream, doing something like that. So I just think of kind of where, if you would ask me this 10 years ago, I probably would have said, Patrick Mahomes. But I'm just going to have to say, with where I'm at right now and how much I'm loving playing golf, I'm going to have to go with playing around like Scotty Scheffler.
Now, do I literally get to inhabit the body of this person? We're playing as Scotty Scheffler or as Patrick Mahomes, right? So my body is not at risk, and I get to play with the actual athleticism of either one of these guys, right? So
right.
My answer is Patrick Mahomes. I have no desire to go out there and play golf. I'm gonna be Patrick Mahomes, and I'm zipping around and flying around. Maybe that means I'm taking, I'm gonna take some hits as well. But Freaky Friday or whatever, I get to jump out of Patrick Mahomes' body when it's all over with. So I'm going Mahomes. I think it would be a heck of a lot more fun.
Who do you think Patrick Mahomes would want to spend a day as, me or you, in this little Freaky Friday situation?
Is neither an option in that one? DK says his answer is Travis Kelce postgame. Okay, keep it clean. Keep it clean. So Gordy and Knott says, so if Notre Dame changed its name to Guinness University.
Yeah, okay, this is different though. We're not actually changing college names. We're just changing the grouping that all these colleges fall into based off of what teams they play athletically. I understand the question. Yes, I would care, but I think it's like an apples to orange question, in my opinion.
I wouldn't care because it's up to them to do what they want. It's their property. It's not like they're taking input from us, when we talk about any of this other stuff. I wouldn't care, but Notre Dame would also never do that. They've got plenty of other, they've got plenty of corporate sponsors, and there are plenty of other things that they can do to get their revenue. I don't think that I don't think that there's an amount of money that they would take that would push them to literally changing their name to, one, they wouldn't change it to Guinness, but they wouldn't change it to anything. But I could see lower rev schools like Purdue, like I'm talking about, like Indiana or Rutgers or Syracuse, any of these lower revenue schools, I think that it's completely up for grabs whether or not they would ever do something like this. Because I think that when you're talking about the Notre Dames, Texas, USC, like the bigger Alabama, obviously, the bigger brand names, Duke, North Carolina, even, because of their basketball, like they don't need to do something like that, but I could easily see with the way the landscape is changing that a school would do something like that ultimately if they were given the opportunity. Would I change my own name to a corporate brand?
For $1 million, I do a lot of things, my friend.
For $1 million, that's right. There are probably certain things that I wouldn't change the name for, but you give me the right amount of money, I would definitely.
Oh, I don't even care. I don't.
$1 million?
Give me $1 million. You could change my name to Big Idiot Stires.
There you go. Oh, DK, thank you for the super chat, sir. He says, for the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. Most of you are deadbeat dads, but I still love you, even if your kids don't. So, all right. Happy Father's Day as well. We'll be back tomorrow to wish everyone a happy Father's Day. Looks like it's going to be just you and me, Vince. Jesse, I just got the word from Vince that he will not be in tomorrow. So, hopefully your plans haven't changed too much.
We'll see.
Gordian Knot says our perspective on this topic is bleak and twisted. I mean,
listen, for money, I have student loan debts right now. I would do just about anything to get those paid off.
I once had, this has been a while, but I once had Desmond Howard as a guest on my radio show. And, we were just kind of going back and forth. And I asked him, how much could I pay him to get him to say, this is Desmond Howard and I love Notre Dame? And he laughed. He got a kick out of it. But what he said was, how much you got? Because everybody got a price. And so, if I would have paid him the right amount, he was willing to say it. And that's what I would say. Everybody's got a price, regardless of what it is, and if you gave me $1 million, you're right. I would change my name to Big Dipstick or, whatever you want for $1 million. So I could be Big Dipstick hosting IB Nation Sports Talk every day. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Jess, appreciate you. As always, appreciate all the input from everyone who submitted questions today and lively in the chat. As always, yes, you can name me $500 super chat. That's absolutely right. $500, I don't know about that. That might be a little bit slim. Hit the like button, though, before you leave, and we'll be back tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.